Welcome to a new month and a new year. Happy New Year to our viewers. My name is Damola Ogunshakin. Let's move straight to the front pages of the dailies this morning. I'm starting with Vanguard. Vanguard is leading with HARDSHIP decisions are taken in best interest of Nigeria. That's according to President Bola Ahmed TINUBU. And here on page 5, NLC, NECA, Labour Party, others fire NASS for raising 2024 budget by 1.2 trillion naira. And while we increased budget to 28.78 trillion naira, that's according to Speaker Tajuddin, says Nigeria set for profound change in budget implementation. It will stoke inflation, drive up budget deficit, that's according to David Adonri. It will put more pressure on the currency, that's according to Nnamdi. Jacking up of 2024 budget, uncharitable, uncalled for, that's coming from Kakoo. You can see that on page 5, and here accompanying that story is a picture of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Akpabio and Edu. And also Financial Vanguard, 2024 economic outlook gloomy as analysts list weak links. Now on page 10, Sterling Bank unveils Africa's first solar-powered headquarters. Nasarawa government partners Shippers Council on inland port projects. You can see that on page 29, and here there's a picture showing Governor Abdullahi Sule of Nasarawa State, Pius Akuta, Executive Secretary, CEO, Nigeria Shippers Council, and the Attorney General of Nasarawa State during a courtesy visit to the Governor of Nasarawa State by the Shippers Council. And away from there, we move to the Nation. Nation this morning is leading with Tinubu's pledge to Nigerians. Expect a fulfilling year 2024. Economy will get a leap. Living wage coming for workers. We will secure our people. Akpabio, Abbas, governors, lawmakers offer hope in New Year messages. And here there are two quotes here. The first is saying, I hear the groans of Nigerians who work hard every day to provide for themselves and their families. And the second quote says, having laid the groundwork, we are now pressed to accelerate the pace of our service delivery across sectors. You can see that on page 4. And on page 5, our 28.78 trillion naira budget can impact economy by experts. While we raise capital components, and there are stories below which see Alake major leap coming for mining. The stories are directly below the banner. It says Kaduna governor raises panel to monitor TINUBU intervention funds. Terrorists deposited arms ahead of attacks on Plateau communities, says Senator. Father, son killed in fresh violence. Defense minister leads service chiefs to attack villages. And our stories above on page 5, factional speaker quits Rivers House of Assembly, likely to be chief of staff. Lastly, on the Nation newspaper, Kanu okay with Supreme Court verdict, says lawyer, we will appeal for bail. You can see that on page 5 of the Nation newspaper. Now the Guardian. Guardian is leading with 2024, Nigerians hopeful amid failed promises on lingering promises. 2024, Nigerians hopeful amid failed promises on lingering problems. You can see that on page 6. Ogun community protest alleged false accusation of land by Chinese. Registrar confirms the immigration of 10,697 medical laboratory scientists. Despite budget surge, poor funding still await education in 2024. While 2024 budget was increased by 1.27 trillion naira, you can see that on page 3. And lastly, on the Guardian newspaper, times are rough, but we must keep hope alive. TINUBU charges Nigerians. You can see that on page 6. Now the Punch newspaper. Punch is leading with a new year. Tackle economic hardship, Nigerians tell federal government. Article, manufacturers expect experts lament economic crisis, want federal government to tame inflation. I am aware of Nigerians' pains, difficult decisions taken to avert economic disaster. That's according to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And stories below, we have 4,504 medical laboratory scientists left Nigeria 2023. That's according to Registrar. Traders count losses as police demolish a computer village power complex. You can see that on pages 4 and 5. UN 6 end to wars in 2024. Stories above the banner: Pope seeks a divine help as military comes remote communities, and the kicker says a plateau. You can see that on page 64. And on page 33, Nigeria borrowed $1.7 billion to boost FX inflows. That's according to MBS. Lastly, on the Punch newspaper, Port Harcourt refinery begins test run. 12 states get supply soon. You can see that on page 36 of the Punch newspaper. And that's all we have on the front pages of the dailies this morning. Join us after the break for a brief analysis of the stories. Welcome back. If you're just joining me, this is Today in the News on Vanguard Live. My name is Damilola Ogunshaki. We're looking at the full text of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's New Year address. And according to the President, with immense joy, he welcomes everyone, both the young and old, to the New Year 2024. And according to him, he says everyone was lifted their hands to Almighty God in gratitude for His grace and benevolence to our country and lives in the year 2023 that has just gone by. And he says, though the past year was a very challenging one, it was eventful in so many ways. For the country, it was a transition year that saw a peaceful, orderly and successful transfer of power from one administration to another, marking yet another remarkable step in the 24 years of unbroken democracy. And says it was a year that the gracious people of the blessed nation entrusted their faith in him with a clear mandate to make the country better, to revive the economy, restore security within the borders, revitalize our flourishing industrial sector, boost agricultural production, increase national productivity, and also to set the country on an irreversible path towards a national greatness that the future generations will forever be proud of. And he says that the task of building a better nation and making sure we have a Nigerian society that cares for all the citizens is the reason why he ran to become the president. And says it was the core of his renewed hope campaign message on the basis of which he was voted as president. And says over the past 7 months of his administration, he has taken some difficult yet necessary decisions to save the country from fiscal catastrophe. One of those decisions was the removal of fuel subsidy, which had become an unsustainable financial burden on the country for more than 4 decades. And another was the removal of the chokehold of few people on the foreign exchange system that benefited only the rich and the most powerful among us. And without doubt, these 2 decisions brought some discomfort to individuals, families and businesses. And says is aware that for some time now the conversation and debate have centered on the rising cost of living, high inflation, which is now above 28%, and unacceptably high underemployment rates. And he says he hears the groans of Nigerians who work hard every day to provide for themselves and their families. And of course, to get more of that and more of the things that the president said, you can always visit our website. Now, away from that story, we look at the story of NECA, NLC Labour Party. Well, the major stakeholders in the polity, including the Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC, Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, NECA, and Labour Party, LP, among others, were up in arms yesterday with the National Assembly for jacking up the 2024 budget by 1.2 trillion naira. Recall that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu had sent a budget proposal of 27.5 trillion to National Assembly for approval, but the lawmakers on Saturday increased it to 28.78 trillion naira before passing it into law. Though the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Tajuddin Abbas, and the Chairman of the Appropriation Committees of the 2 arms of the National Assembly, Adiola Solomon, Senate, and Abuba Bichi, House of Representatives, had explained why the increase was necessary. Now, away from that, let's look at this story from Nasarawa State. And well, Nasarawa State government said it is willing to partner with the Nigeria's Shippers Council, NLC, to facilitate the establishment of inland dry ports, that's IDP, and the state, as part of government's determination to increase the inflow of business activities that will bring employment to its its teeming young population. The Executive Secretary and Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Shippers Council, Mr. Pius, told journalists after a closed-door meeting with the state governor, that's Engineer Abdullah Sule, that the governor had already issued directives on how the project should be actualized for the benefit of the shippers in the state. The NSC boss added that arrangements are being put in place by the state for a visit to the corporate headquarters of the Nigerian Shippers Council as part of the effort to fast-track the development of the inland dry port project. And that's all we have on the front pages. Now let's quickly take a look at Mr. and Mrs. before we go this morning. And the first person talking is Mrs. Mrs. says, Happy New Year, dear. Today is January 1st. What about the money you promised me since last year? And Mr. says, since last year, but that was just 3 days ago. And Mrs. says, and so was that not last year? Let's take it easy. It's just a few hours gone. But of course, there's Mr. and Mrs. Now, to get more of our top stories, you can follow us on all our social media platforms showing on your screen on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. My name is Damola Ogunshakin. Have a lovely Monday and enjoy your new year.